Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us at the Dentsu Beach House. Our next panel is just about to begin. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. We've got Ashley, Mark, and Pascal, and the topic is expanding human expression through innovation. So a round of applause for our panelists.
Hello. I hope everybody's having a lovely start to their very busy, very warm week at Cannes. Thank you so much for making the time to join our fireside sort of conversation panel today. I have the pleasure of being joined on stage by Mark Lobel, Emmy-Nominated journalist who has been with the BBC for over 20 years, and Pascal Rotteveel, our Global Executive Creative Director at Dentsu Lab. Thank you both. How are we feeling?
Fantastic.
So, I think it would be unavoidable to come to Cannes and not hear the word innovation. Innovation is absolutely at the forefront of everybody's agenda, but actually when we reflected on the innovation narrative that we see, we sort of feel that a lot of the focus is placed on what technology can do, rather than what technology should be doing. And that's a conversation that's very pivotal and very central to the work that we do at Dentsu Lab. Dentsu Lab is a team that deliver creative research and development towards innovative solutions that balance creativity, technology, and humanity in equal measures. And we look at those lenses to uncover possibilities for our clients. And one of those projects that is now up for award at Cannes and has been doing the rounds across the awards circuit recently is Waves of Will. And Waves of Will is a prime example of something that we hold in great importance, which is that sometimes looking at just even the need of one individual can open up a world of possibility when it comes to innovation. For Waves of Will, that one voice in question was from Breanna Olson, who has a message to share with us all today.
Hello. I wish I could be there in person to tell you how this project has changed my perspective on what is possible, giving a new sense of hope for people living with ALS. When I was performing again, I felt like I got a little bit of myself back. It was a magical and transformative experience.
Thank you.
Breanna Olson is former professional dancer, mother of 3, and has been diagnosed with ALS. And even in the 6 months period that we have been developing the communication around this project, has unfortunately, her disease has progressed to now approximately 75% disability. And as you can see from the video, since developing the case material, has lost the ability to communicate freely with her mouth, which just indicates the speed and progressiveness of this disease and why innovation like this work is so important to us. Waves of Will as a project invited Breanna Olson to return to the stage once more and dance using her brainwaves. This project has been backed by innovation, including real-time machine learning to detect her intent, moving her left or right hand, and allow her to make choices across a grid system at speed that would ultimately control a virtual avatar on stage, allowing her to freely perform again on stage in real time using only her brainwaves. It also allowed her, as well as performing, to be the co-creative director and choreographer of the piece due to the usability and accessibility of the technology, which was something that was incredibly important to us in the creation of this work. And ultimately then travelled from a theatre stage in Amsterdam to the world via a feature on BBC News. Thank you to you, Mark. So, a question to you. In your seat at the forefront of innovation across the world, some of the headlines as they break around technology and also just across the news cycle, what was it about this story and this moment that stood out to you and made it such a success?
Ashley, first of all, thank you very much for having me here, and welcome everybody. Why did it go from the millions? Why are we talking about billions? This is a story that speaks to everybody. This is a story that speaks to everybody. And, you know, the situation that Breanna created by dancing, even though her body wouldn't let her, was a triumph of humanity, a triumph of human will. And although she's very brave, she is living a nightmare. And yet, whenever you hear from her, whenever you speak to her, whenever you get an email from her, she is unbelievably inspiring, and it shows the resilience, the love, and the compassion that is the human spirit, that is humanity. And it was incredible, that performance that she was able to put together there on the stage in Amsterdam, and the standing ovation that she received. But the thing that struck me most from watching that back was not what happened on the stage, but what happened afterwards, where her father, Kevin, said that he is sure that this is prolonging her life. This whole process is prolonging her life. And so it comes as no surprise to anybody here, I'm sure, that when this story came up, it sailed through the BBC commissioning process, which, if you know the BBC commissioning process, isn't easy to do, for anything to sail through that thing. And the reason why is because there was this emotional connection. And emotional connection is becoming more and more important.
Absolutely.
As we're finding out from the gentleman who handed in his P45 on Downing Street today. He didn't have an emotional connection, and after 2 years, he's no longer Prime Minister, unfortunately for him. But that is truly important. But the other hugely appealing thing of covering this story was to raise awareness. Now, this was in March, and the month before, Eric Danes from Grey's Anatomy, who had also had ALS, passed away. And it was coming up to May, which is ALS Awareness Month. But one of the crucial things, and where's Antonia? There, Antonia was phenomenally instrumental in pushing this forwards, because we were having to dance around Donald Trump. On the Monday night of the week...
Never easy.
Never easy. On the Monday night of the week that we were going to go out, he said he was going to obliterate Iran that night. So waking up on Tuesday morning at 2 a.m., which I do for my early presenting shifts, I checked my phone going, is that it? Is the world over? And TACO or whatever it's called, he'd chickened out. Thankfully, I was straight on the phone with Antonia. And because of Breanna's condition, there was an urgency.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, sorry, I go on for very long.
Please.
You can cut me off at any point.
Please keep going.
Fast forward, we decided to speak to Breanna the Thursday night before the Friday of the interview. And when I spoke to her on the Zoom, there were about 5 of us, Antonia, some BBC producers who were staying late to do the interview as well. We were in tears. The whole thing was extraordinary. Her poise, her elegance, she was a remarkable person. And through her, the story has been told brilliantly. And it really came together from that. And this is not just a technology story. It's touching everybody's lives, because I'm sure everybody here is probably touched by somebody who has a similar condition. We all know somebody now. My father had Parkinson's, and I remember being inside an operating theatre, reporting on brain surgery for somebody else. They were putting a pacemaker in their brain. Well, this is different because Naoki, basically there he is. Naoki, who's the creator behind this and who I had the honor to speak to, has produced this EEG headset, which anybody looking at it for more than a minute can see is not invasive. And also you can see that it's not going to be expensive. You can see that it's going to be able to bring the price down for these experiences. In fact, I got to speak to Naoki on the BBC. Let's have a quick listen in to this clip, first of all.
Naoki, you have a clip of you. Hope that's okay.
This is part of a long journey we call Project Humanity. So, after participating in Tokyo 2020 Paralympics, I have been exploring a new interface that everyone can take part in society. And during talking with ALS people, so I learned from the final stage of ALS, which is called TLS, totally locked in state. In this stage, the person can still fully conscious, but can no longer move their body, including moving eyes, and they can no longer communicate. So I felt that this is a profound issue. And, so there are many brainwave technology in the research all over the world, but most of them are very expensive and they require surgery. So I think this is not accessible for everyone. So this is exactly why we start this project, Webs of Will, to make a new brainwave interface.
So just to pick up off that, Project Humanity says what it means, and it was that mindset that had driven the technology, that driven the innovation to find that worst case scenario when you even lose the ability to blink. And how can we then interact with people. That's the moment that captured us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to the point that we started with, right? There's a lot of technology and what it can do, but thinking about really what it should do and how it should be experienced is what sort of takes it to that next level of relatability, where everybody on the street, something as complex as brainwaves, starts to hold meaning, starts to translate what the possibility could be to everyday people.
And the pivot that Dentsu made was that this was technology that was used to look and find out and discover if you had epilepsy or brain disorders or sleep problems. But to turn it on its head, like you say, into a technology that's so positive, that allows you to be human for longer, was incredible.
Yeah, and Pascal, I guess, how is this sort of a demonstration, the way that this story has been adopted to now reach, I think, almost close to 2 billion impressions worldwide? Why is this so sort of indicative of the success of that program of work with NTT and Dentsu Lab, and why has that continued to be such a success?
So, as you can see on some places around, like, our ethos is innovating the impact, which means also like focusing on the human aspect first. Technology without any human impact or an emotional layer is just a component stack. There's nothing interesting about it. But the fact that we were able to use this to actually impact someone's life in real time and enabling her to dance again and express herself again, like, that's, I think, the thing that made it resonate so much. It's more than just someone else saying, oh, something AI. No, there was, like, we made someone's life better, and as a demonstration, showed to the rest of the world, like, what is out there for the other 1.3 billion people living with physical disabilities. You mentioned your father having Parkinson's. This same technology can be used for people with Parkinson's to express themselves again when they can no longer control their own voice anymore. Or, well, you can think of any type of a physical disability where you're cognitively still aware but physically unable to express yourself. This will help all these people work again, learn, and communicate eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me also a shining example of NTT's ambition to make communication accessible to all. I think nothing can be for all of us if it's not designing for those needs at the sort of edges of society or the ones that are currently unmet, that we can take a piece of sometimes even existing technology and by looking at that through a different lens or somebody else's lived experience, find a totally new platform to create value with it, which I think is such a shining example of this work.
Yeah, it's not at all about the technology, it's what it enables. And I think sometimes that means we take it's a project of a few years, or last year, Garuda Rockshock, where we used like 70s radar technology to help find lost children at big events. Like, it's not about the newness of the technology, but it's what it actually means for real people.
Exactly, and I think when we look at an event like Cannes, we think about innovation and what that really means, and for us it's about sort of putting things into practice as quickly as possible. You know, sometimes it can be a proof of concept, but the faster we can get it to real people in real lived situations to test it, that gives us ultimately a longer roadmap to run with those learnings, which is something that we're currently in the process of doing as we speak. And I think that stood out as so important to me with the Waves of Will project, is we're thinking about, you know, the solutions and not overlooking who they can really help most. And so we had a message from Lamora Noack, who is the director of the ALS Society Netherlands, who speaks to sort of the potential of this project for all of those suffering with ALS.
When you receive a diagnosis like ALS, you lose so much of yourself. This technology allowed Breanna to hold on to her great passion, to her identity, to who she is. We sincerely hope that this technique will be further developed and will eventually be available to a wide group of people so that they can continue to express themselves and pursue their passions for as long as possible.
And I think that's exciting to me, Mark. I know we've talked about today a couple of instances. One, the fast decay of your iPhone. Secondly, the snap spectacles and the sort of push to create these form factors. I mean, why does this project that sort of seems quite technically complex sort of demonstrate the potential of how simple this could become?
The simplicity is incredible in terms of what you can see and what you can use. And the message is one that goes against all of the fear that we see. Pick up the newspapers every day. I mean, I was in Ukraine recently, and okay, it is really impressive, the drone technology. Even when you dig down into looking at how they treat landmines, Prince Harry was there. You know, you've got the drones that map them, and then you've got robots that come in and collect them. But it's all about war. It's all about negative things. Now, Breanna's story, on the face of it, is very scary. She's the same age as me. She has young kids too, and she's facing an uncertain future.
Yeah.
But this technology provides such a positive and optimistic example of what can be done, that the technology story here can be positive. And I think that is important for investors, for companies to realize. But prototypes cost money. And I would assume that everybody listening and watching to this knows that that goes way beyond an R&D budget. And this is, I think, the lesson that needs to be taken from this.
I also think, to add to that, I think in the way that we've done this together with NTT is like a true partnership, working together with their R&D teams, with their scientists, and then having our kaleidoscopic teams of neurodevelopers, creatives, creative technologists come together and get to somewhere fast. Dentsu Lab is built for speed, for rapid prototyping, where some other R&D teams are obviously much more academic and it's more profound. It can take years to get somewhere, and we're that sort of facilitator to crunch it and make it happen fast so that you have a performance on stage, see it materialize right in front of your eyes, and that patent that you have actually be put to practice instead of it coming down the pike years down the line.
And that is, just to go back to Ukraine, that is what you see there. The reason that has been successful is they have tried things and they've got use cases immediately before you've gone through the regulators, and top levels of government have allowed that. So you need an ecosystem that allows that very speedy design and testing of these types of technologies. So it's important to get government behind it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that we talked about, right? The fact that actually when you look at sort of consumer sentiment, brands are going to be the ones that are playing such an influential role, possibly the most influential role in solving problems that we're experiencing en masse in humanity. You referenced the continuous change of Prime Minister in the UK today. I think there's a lack of consistency and stability when it comes to other institutions. And so our job is to help brands find those possibilities and play that role of reassurance in consumers' lives. I think there's a huge opportunity to do that better. Would you agree?
100%. I mean, this is one of the things that we also see in the collaborations with our clients. I think when you look at consumers, don't pin me down on the statistic. I'm not a strategist, but I think it's around like 70% of consumers have more faith that companies will change the world for the better than actual government, which is both sad, obviously, but also shows the impact that businesses can have for a better world. And like our belief with Dentsu Lab is also to make something or create work that has a positive societal impact as well as a positive business impact. In this industry, those two are often sort of like mutually exclusive, but they don't have to be. And when you're looking at how audiences are responding to it now, you see that they are expecting brands to actually do that. Then having these type of partnerships where you're not just only working with the CMOs, but also the chief R&D officers to make something happen, you see that the fruits of that labor just go far, far beyond what we ever expected.
And it is fascinating talking to people who work in Dentsu and seeing how the culture emanates, obviously from the Japanese origins as well. And I know it's a very shy and humble culture. But if I was to take one comparison between Dentsu Labs and, say, Anthropic's AI lab, if you look at and I won't use the word, but if you look at the mess that is currently playing out between them and the American government, it's an extraordinary thing to witness a company that's restricting the government from using its technology because it doesn't trust it. And then suddenly one of the greatest investors in Anthropic calling up the government saying, but do you realize that this new Fable chatbot can actually can help the hackers? You need to get it off the market. Yeah. This does not give the public confidence. Now, I don't know how far that story has broken through. Obviously, everybody here, I'm sure, knows about Fable, and we can see it when we go onto the Claude chatbot. But it's, there are things going on at the top that are not healthy, and there's the culture that I've seen, certainly from Dentsu Lab, that does need to emanate in order for this to be more significant and more popular.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes back to that, the sort of the ethos towards innovation that we have, that openness, the sort of, there's no point in having a world-changing idea if the client doesn't understand it, or if the consumers are not following along with it, or if people don't really sort of believe in it and see the positive impact of it as well. And so having that sort of open book ethos to innovation, taking our clients and partners along the journey with us, keeping that all very open and collaborative is fundamental to going further with the innovation work that we do. So bringing it back to Waves of Will, Pascal, I think, we've seen how successful the story has been and how potentially scalable the project is now with the form factor that we have with the headset and the versatility and usability of the choice grid system that Breanna was able to put into practice. So where do we go from here?
Well, so it's the latest installment in like a multi-year program called Project Humanity, where we've done many different types of interface innovations to help people with disabilities. The next step in this particular project for Waves of Will is making the actual innovation, which is that real-time machine learning element, more efficient, more accurate, and building an API for it so it can scale further. The interesting bit of it is like, in this particular case, we're using the headset that you can put on. But say if you're a person that already has a brain implant, it measures the same thing. Our system can also be deployed onto that. So it's really hardware agnostic, and that also opens it up for much more exploration, which is why we're currently, we'll be at the Motor Neuron Disease Symposium later this year to find those collaborators, to find those partners to create the next step with it. And we're in conversation with the University of Manchester's a neuro faculty or neuroscience faculty. They're doing an empirical study that's been going on for 2 years. So they have vast amount of data sets that we will use to optimize and scale the system so that it can go on. So this is definitely not like, an 8-week marketing cycle stunt gimmick. This is a multi-year thing that will keep going. And it also shows in how NTT has already been investing in developing technology for a more inclusive society for like the past 20 years. This Project Humanity has, in that context, only been around for 6, but you can see it has a lot of potential, and we keep pushing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's in the DNA of the way that Dentsu Lab operates, is we're always looking for partners, collaborators to take maybe a piece of technology or maybe just a human need that you've identified and apply that in sort of very different ways and collaborate very sort of thoroughly with different institutions that allow us to go the distance. And then maybe for Mark, a question to you, beyond 1.8 billion people that the story has reached so far, where do we go from here in terms of the power of the story, and what is something that our clients, our partners, guests today can take away from the success so far of Waves of Will?
This is purely inspiring, and people should just think big from what we have seen. Ashley and Pascal and I have witnessed Breanna, unfortunately, unable to talk without the use of an AI device at some points in the day. That voice cloning is really useful, and we've seen it, but that was just in the space of 2 months. When I interviewed her, we were talking, and the clip that you saw there was 2 months after. That was last week. So my thought is, and is this possible, but people with AI cloning can clone the grandparents, can clone the parents, and continue to talk to them and have chats with them when they've passed away, and they can play them to the grandchildren and all the rest of it, and maybe put them on their Google Maps, I don't know, whatever they want their parents to be telling them in later life. Is it possible that Breanna would want to produce and record special dances for her children's 18th birthdays and 21st birthdays, and that is the essence of who she is? It's the dancing, and you've tapped into that. Could she create those dances that come out once she's left this beautiful planet, but continues to be inspiring for her 3 children? Because that's the story that you're left with when all the noise dies down and you think about Breanna and you hear her and you see what she's like. You think about what she's losing, which is her connection with her children. But can you help with that, almost in the afterlife?
Yes.
Great.
Possibly.
An interesting fact of like how we build the virtual avatar that she's operating. All its movement are informed by all of her historical dance data, so that the avatar would actually move in a way that she does. Because it's not literally, like I'm thinking doing a pirouette and then follows the movement of what your body would normally do. She can choose all the different movements, stitch them together, but it behaves and dances exactly like her. So hypothetically speaking, should she say, I want to show a dance performance 10 years down the line from now that I design now and then play afterwards, that is something we could do today because we have the full library. You can do all this thing. I think to your point on like the key takeaway, right? I think like this is what happens when you're looking at innovation from a human lens. When you start with a personal story and create something that if it's meaningful to one person, generally speaking, it will be meaningful to many. And that's like, if you build that in, then the scale will follow.
And I think the expression around the humanity of technology can be used quite often, but I think if you really unpack what we mean by that, humans are messy, flawed, emotive, unpredictable, and so I think designing for that versatility, designing for that flexibility, but also something we talked about earlier. This is not about providing concrete solutions that are accurate or fixed. This is about giving somebody their life back. This is about somebody living and expressing themselves. And I think there's a big difference that often tech or health or data can overlook, which is it's not about being fastest or right or the most contextual, but really understanding what somebody is trying to accomplish here and what it means to them as a human being. And I think that was what was so striking about this piece of work for me. Any other remarks for the team to take away today?
I would like people to take away this one thought when it comes to health tech and this area, is that technology can bring you back from the loneliest places. And those are Breanna's words. And I think that's how to think about it, because when you think about the most positive thing that technology can do, if somebody gets cancer, if somebody has one of these motor neuron diseases, it suddenly comes your way within your life cycle, whatever age you are, whatever your family structure. How can technology reach into that place and help those people and think about humanity and how to relive those values that we consider to be, that make us human?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for reflecting on the project with us. Mark, thank you so much for sharing your perspective, your point of view on technology and sort of why this story resonated so broadly. I think for me, Cannes is such a wonderful platform for newness and innovation, but I think we have to hold ourselves accountable. Just because something isn't obvious or scaled or easy doesn't mean it's not absolutely worth doing, and we should be looking for those stories, those individuals that tell us where there is a missed opportunity and what might be the right path to get there, so that we can support, collaborate, and find frontiers to technology that might not currently exist that can leave a lasting positive impression, because I think you only have to turn on the news for 5 minutes to be slightly overwhelmed with the narrative. But if we can just do these 1 or 2 small moments of positivity in somebody's day to give people back hope, to give people back perspective, then I think that's worth doing every time, right?
And if there's anyone in the audience today that wishes to collaborate and push this project further, please reach out to us, because we're not stopping.
So thank you so much for the time. Thank you for the patience and for surviving the heat with us. We have been Dentsu Lab, and thank you so much, Mark Lobel, for coming, sharing the story with us, sharing the stage with us, and continuing Breanna's story and personal objective. I know she would have loved to join us here, and we'll be so thankful for all of you following her journey with us. So thank you very much, and speak to you soon.
Thank you.
We will want to follow it.